Is it just the two of us at this point?
Hey, Bill. Yes, so far.
Yeah, I was looking over those plans the other day. I have no honest objections, just a question on the gravel drive, the gravel part of the roads. Other than that, everything looked good on my end.
All right. We just have to get a quorum in here, and then I can open up the meeting.
And I apologize, I haven't made any meetings in the last couple of months. Just every time meeting day comes up, something happens. And I go, oh, damn it.
It's a little bit going on in your department. I know that.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out, like, this office doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, I come in when I can now.
Yep.
Anywho, how you been?
Doing good. Busy. Very busy.
Yeah, looks like everything's starting to pick up again.
Yep. Lots of applications.
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon. Not yet, Chris.
Well, it's my afternoon.
I guess it depends on how early you get up, right?
All right. Quick happen here. On my big screen.
No.
Well,
Look at that handsome fella.
hey, and this takes off 10 pounds, it says. Good, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
How we doing?
Good. How are you?
We're good. Come on, Ron.
Hi, Carl.
All right. So it's just after 9 o'clock. So I guess we'll get started. This is a meeting of the Technical Review Committee, March 31st, 9 a.m. We have 2 items on the agenda. The first item that we'll talk about is the Wallace application located at 819 Aquidneck Avenue. And I'm going to let the applicant into the meeting now.
Morning.
Morning. Just make sure we've got everybody on that needs to be on. Good morning, Court.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good. And I've got Todd Chaplin coming in. There's Todd.
You see John Wallace. He's the petitioner. Todd Chaplin. We may have Steve Sullivan, the architect.
Steven
if you have any
Sullivan.
questions. Yeah. And Pat Sweeney's our landscape architect. Everybody was scheduled to pop on if you needed to talk to them.
Yeah, I'll let everybody in, and whoever wants to talk can talk.
Look at you on your knees.
Morning. I'm going to mute Mr. Homer. Okay, so as I said, first application is the Wallace subdivision or Wallace development plan. Court, do you want to go ahead and introduce the project and maybe Todd, can you
Sure.
go through the plan?
Sure. So Mr. Wallace and his wife, Mr. Wallace is on, purchased the property at 819 Aquidneck Avenue. And for those of you that may be familiar with it, it was a house that we called the Wendy Lord Harvey house. It was a 3-bedroom, single-family, kind of pre-existing non-conforming house built in 1930. And then Mr. Harvey most recently ran his detailing business out of what we called the connector between the house and the garage itself. At some point, it fell into foreclosure, and Mr. and Mrs. Wallace picked it up out of foreclosure with the intention of renovating the house and utilizing the commercial area as kind of an art studio. Her idea. The building department found out about this house because it kind of fallen into a state of disrepair. The kids were playing in it and they had concerns of abatement, and I believe even had abatement orders on it. So when the architects and contractors got involved, it was kind of determined that for the amount of money to structurally and bring it back to its integrity, it might be better to demo it and to rebuild it. Under the zoning ordinance of the town of Middletown, if I demo a project, I don't necessarily have the right to build it back directly. Remember, if it got destroyed by a hurricane or something, I would have 6 months to build it back. And it is a pre-existing mixed use, which is allowed by special use permit in the LBA zone. So it would have been allowed really with no permits except a building permit to redo the building. But when it became evident that it was going to be a demo permit, that started a process where all of a sudden 5 or 6 months later, because of the requirements of technical review, we now have full building plans, landscape architect plans, full engineer and drainage plans, RIDOT permits, and everything that was required to sit in front of you this morning. But if the architect plans have been turned over to you, basically it's I don't think anyone's going to have a problem with the building being aesthetically pleasing and fitting into design review impact of being in the nature with a Middletown building. It has the component of a garage to house not only the 620 square foot apartment that's in the second floor, but also some of the materials for the pottery or art studio itself. Brief overview of that is about 1,200 square foot of commercial space, if you will. 200 square foot of that is going to be dedicated to retail, to sell small things that from local artists that may want to post it. Local artists will be able to either by membership or on an hourly rate come and create in the open space. We're expected to have some pottery wheels, I think 4, with a couple of kilns, small kilns. And hopefully the art community will utilize this as a meeting place, a place to sell some local wares, and there could be some sessions and things of trying to get people into the local art community by offering programs to come and try to make a pot or make a bowl or whatever the case may be. So we certainly see it as a very low innocuous use. Remember, it was a 3-bedroom house, and you've all heard the trip generations from traffic experts on a 3-bedroom house. Clearly, a 3-bedroom house has more traffic generated than a 600 square foot apartment. If you look at the plans, by the way, the reason it's a 600 square foot apartment is the art studio itself is open with a cathedral ceiling, and since most of it's cathedral, it leaves just a small 600 foot apartment for the upstairs. The traffic and impact, this studio we expect to hold no more than 10. We expect 4 to 6 people. When traditionally you may rent time to come in to take 2, 3, 4 hours to work on a project, it's not a person every 10 minutes. So the traffic impact we expect to be very low. With that, there is currently an issue because it's a LBA, traffic sensitive area, and your ordinance does suggest that a traffic sensitive area, if this was a blank lot or a clean slate would have only one entrance. There are two entrances already on Avenue. Our IDOT has taken this opportunity when we permitted to have them rebuilt at our expense. You'll see their report where they want us to redo the culverts and the swale on both of those. We asked them their opinion, whether or not we should have one or two. They certainly had no problem with two and thought the traffic flow of in and out with one-way traffic might actually be better for Aquidneck Avenue. But ultimately, I think that falls to you because it's in an LBA district. We had to do it one way or another. So we proposed it as the pre-existing condition with permission from our IDOT to do both entrances because they felt and we feel that it would make the parking easier. As to parking, your ordinance requires 2 parking spaces for a apartment, for a 1-bedroom apartment. And we have counted those. Your ordinance doesn't have a specific use for art studios, so we put it in the other general category, which is consistent with your parking ordinance of 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. When you add them together, that was 6. With a handicap spot would be 7. I can let Todd talk to that, but I think we've easily drawn 10 parking spots on the property, and we do not consider that parking or traffic flow will be an issue. In front of the garage doors, your ordinance looks for a loading zone. We've left a spot that's large enough for that. This is not a business we anticipate trucks. There's no, other than during the construction, we expect patrons to come in their cars. There's no dumpsters or garbage because there's no more created in this apartment, in this art studio than would be in a small office. So it's not a dumpster requirement. There's no waste in an art studio. So we think we've met those requirements. The building is not in exactly the same footprint that it is originally. But one of the reasons is by shifting it parallel to the line, we require no zoning relief in town. We've held the sidelines, the front yard, the rear yard, lot coverage. So it would be a clear special use permit requiring no dimensional relief. I do believe there may be a waiver required. Originally, Ron was nice enough to point out that our first drawing may have required a waiver on lighting on the building. We've changed that lighting and given the good new schematic to meet the requirements of the ordinance without a variance. And then there is a section of the ordinance regarding parking that talks about the 5-foot sidewalk and buffer between the front parking lot because of the drainage and the swales and because of the, that ordinance, quite frankly, is for shopping centers as well as, a use such as this. So I do believe there's still a requirement, a waiver requirement for some of the land, the separation between the parking and the building itself. And I think Mr. Chaplin is here to tell you about the drainage. The driveways, I believe I'm going to call it the north driveway, is currently paved. It will be paved up to the garages, and in front of the garages are paved. I believe it's gravel as it breaks to the north and goes out the second driveway, utilizing the existing, some portions of the first few feet of the existing driveway, I believe, are paved as well. And the gravel spots are just to help us with impervious and to help the drainage situation, and to also, it's an art studio. The more this has the aesthetic green, ecological look, it's obviously in tune with an art studio. It's not a modern look to this building, as you can see. So with that, any questions you have of anyone specifically, we'll be able to field them.
Todd, did you want to go over the site plan at all?
Yeah, I think Court did a pretty good job of summarizing that, but we have worked with DOT pretty closely on this, and as Mr. Chappelle mentioned, there were 2 driveways there existing, and DOT felt it was actually better to keep the 2 driveways. They're both relatively narrow, and instead of having one entrance and exit combined, it kind of allows for traffic flow to come in and out of the site a little more naturally by having the 2 existing driveways be used. Court's got his north and south flip-flopped. It's the southern entrance. The southern entrance is existing concrete and ran out towards the back, and that's going to remain paved as it goes up to that garage in the rear. The northern entrance is gravel, and we'll continue to have gravel in the in front of the building for the parking area. But we will repave the aprons on the DOT property. Typically, that allows for the traffic to be able to accelerate out onto the main road without spinning gravel or whatever, and having that be paved just keeps snow plowing and entrance in and out of the site a little safer for everyone. So those areas are going to be improved. We are going to replace there's 2 culverts, one under each of those driveways. They're going to replace both of those and repair 3 of the 4, and probably could certainly end up being all 4 of the little head walls that are on those culverts. There's an existing swale, shallow swale that runs along Aquidneck Ave in that area, and they will clean that swale out and restore its depth and elevation as part of that. So some of the culvert is a little filled in, and that'll all be restored back to new condition essentially. And then there will be a new small retention basin built in the front of the property, like many of the properties that are out on Aquidneck Ave on that side of the road. And the drainage calcs show that the impervious areas the runoff will actually be reduced from what was there before by having this swale there prior to having the retention basin there prior to the swale. So all the storm water from the site will be captured there, and then it can overflow to the swale if need be. Otherwise, it would be retained on site. Other than that, it's not significantly different from what's been out there and in use. Continue to use existing site utilities. That's pretty much it. DOT has signed off on the plans and has issued the permit for that. So
Great, thank you. So maybe we'll just go around the horn here and with the committee members ask questions and address issues. And actually, I want to start with the zoning questions. So Chris, this is a special use permit for the mixed use, and they believe they have no dimensional issues. I guess the one question I have is regarding the 2 curb cuts, because that would be potentially a zoning issue in the LBA, although it's a pre-existing condition. I guess my question is, do they need any zoning to maintain the two curb cuts?
I don't believe they're gonna need zoning on the curb cuts. You know, they'll get their DOT maps, all that filled out and approved. You know, and I'll verify, or Warren will verify that for the existing curb cuts.
Okay.
Special use permit, yeah, you know, it's a little larger than I was expecting on, you know, having rentals, you know, for half a dozen people to go use their pottery equipments in a meeting place. You know, I was almost under the impression I could do it with a home occupation, but it's a little more and above. So I think it's a great idea, but it's going to require that special use permit for the mixes on this art studio. Besides that, I'm all game. It's a very nice plan.
Yeah, it was close to being allowed as a matter of right, but
Oh, well.
I certainly understood with the size of the garage and the square footage and how small the apartment was, the commercial wagged the dog, the tail wagged the dog is what happened. So
Yeah.
I thought it was an appropriate request to do what we have to do. I just think it's a nice project.
Yeah. Very good.
All right, you're done, Chris? You all set?
I'm done. I like it. I'm done with that. I'll help any way I can when it comes time for that application for the special use when you get over these hurdles.
Thank you.
Warren Hall, let's go to you next.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Todd. Court, appreciate it. So I do have a couple of questions on the DOT permit. That included the drainage design also, Todd?
Yes, it did. Yep.
It did. So they've got that signed off. And Ron, you have a copy of that permit?
Yes.
Okay.
They reviewed all the drainage calculations as part of that PAP application.
Good, good. So my one comment on the drainage calcs themselves is your 100-year storm event,
Okay.
7.1 inches. I think you may have used an older, but it's 8.6 now, 8.6 inches for a 100-year event. You might want to check that.
Okay. I can check
Okay.
that.
So we'll need the revised set on those. And the drainage, and I think Bob Hanley will probably comment on this also, is the proposed sewer line runs underneath the detention basin.
Yes.
Can we get that moved to the north or south away from the bottom of the basin? Or
Yeah, I think we were trying to grab an existing curb stop for the water, but maybe we can run the sewer. Yeah, we should be able to go north or south and get it away from the basin there.
Okay, good. So the driveways, the two driveways, obviously that area of Aquidneck Avenue is pretty congested, pretty busy during the peak hours. There's no chance of combining them into one drive. And
Sure,
then,
I guess that could be done. We entertained that idea and we discussed that with DOT a little bit, but the one existing drive, again, there were existing culverts in the swale that were passing, both drives were passing over those. You would have had to widen, you would have had to pick one of those entrances and then widen it in order to allow access in and out of the site. And then you would have needed to extend either one of those culverts, make one of those culverts wider to allow access over it. And then the flow would come into the site. And then with the requirement to have a retention basin there and some parking areas and stuff, you kind of started to create a little bit of a dead end once you were into the site. There was not so much room for turning around and getting back out of the site. It would have made for kind of a congested and awkward parking area there in front of the building. So with both exits already there, it seemed to make the most sense for traffic flow to just come in one and out the other. There was no requirement from DOT to make one or the other exit or entrance only, but I suppose that could be done if it was necessary to. But it allowed traffic flow to come into the site and pass through and back out the other site without two cars side by side in the entranceway.
So maybe I missed it, but would one of these driveways be an entrance and one be an exit only? It'd be a restriction there?
Well, it's not required at this point to be that way. But
we wouldn't have a problem with that. We talked about
I guess I'm
that
saying it could be done if everybody was in
site.
agreement with that.
Okay.
And I think it only makes sense if the south is the entrance, right? One that goes to the garage.
Yeah. Plus, if you're in the northbound lane, that's going to be your easy right-hand turn and you're not crisscrossing each other, right?
Yeah, looks right. And then, Todd, the only other item on the driveways would be the angle to the edge of pavement. if we do end up with the two drives, just square them up, make sure they're 90 degrees for your better. I'm assuming that the north one looks like it's almost 90. The south one looks like it may be skewed.
Skewed a little, but that might be easier said than done, Warren. Just I think if you turn that, again, you're going to be, to square that up, you might have to either move the culvert, and then you don't want I mean, right now the driveway, once it's on the property, is essentially parallel to the property. At least the southern one is, which it's parallel to the property line, but not square to not perpendicular to the Quidnick Ave. I mean, the radiuses were there. DOT seemed to be satisfied with the way the entrances were into the driveway. I mean, we could look at it, but I think it's a little more complicated than just squaring them up.
Well, that's the issue on Aquidneck Avenue is just too many curb cuts right now. If you go down there, you've got people turning in, turning out, stopping, left turns, the traffic backs up. I don't think there's any question about that it's a stressed area as far as traffic goes. So
So Warren, if we have that, add that as a condition that there be an in only and an out only, and that skewed driveway would be the in only. Is that as much of an issue that it's angled? It wouldn't seem like it'd be as much of an issue as if it was the exit.
Can I interject for just a moment? With regard to, I'm the landscape architect, with regard to that entrance, in order to square it up perpendicular with the roadway and keep it on the property, we would have to move closer to the existing large overstory maple tree that we're trying to preserve and protect. And we would undoubtedly affect the root zone. It's a very established tree. It's 50 feet or higher with the same spread. And then just a comment as well about the two entrances. I looked at all the dimensions as well. And in order for people to safely back out and pull out in the forward position, it's kind of a necessity to have those two entrances. So I think it makes it much safer to pass back out onto Aquidneck by having the two entrances. Or one exit, one entrance, whatever it may be deemed to be.
I know the moral of the story is we tried to accommodate all portions of the ordinance, and one of those is to preserve all of these trees. And we all battled back and forth. We're probably here, I'm guessing, 90 days later than we would have been here because of DOT. DOT's working from home. They did a nice job. We'd send an app, they'd send back and ask for revisions. We'd send an app, they'd send back for revisions. And originally when this began, this was all specifically discussed with them that this is clearly a LBA traffic sensitive area, and that the board may require one entrance or two. And we actually originally gave them the two, and they didn't have a problem. That certainly doesn't mean the town doesn't have a problem, but they didn't have a problem and actually came back and said, this seems like a safer plan given the use and how narrow the lot is. With a narrow lot, if you make this 24 feet wide, you really are only moving the in and out. You're putting them together, but you're only sliding them X feet. You know, this isn't a shopping center that has 400 foot of frontage, and when we're having two driveways, these are, you know, it's not an island between it, but it's not much more than an island between the two driveways. It's because of how narrow the lot is in general.
Right.
That was the theory. We expect this to be a discussion, but collectively with all the king's horses and men's and architects and where the pavement was going to be and where the parking could be and where the setbacks and engineering of the detention area and the big trees, this seemed to be the only thing that worked well.
Good. So I'm looking at those trees right now. I see the landscape architect's plan here. And the existing maple tree is north of that driveway, the southerly driveway. So I'm wondering if you just can't move that driveway to the south and completely avoid that tree. I know you have a stone wall over there, but we're talking about the same thing here.
Right, but if you're to make it 90 degrees with the road, it implies moving that entrance northerly and then coming back toward the south to bend it and flow into that existing driveway.
Don't you have to rotate that, Warren, to like 3 o'clock, if you're gonna make that 90 degrees? And now that means, I think Patrick's correct. You'd have to move the entrance to the north in order to turn it to 3 o'clock and not have it crash into the wall, or else you'd have to pull in and have a bend almost as soon as you pull in. I mean, that entrance has been it's just been that way for a long time. I think it's actually probably more comfortable for everybody the way it is. And I don't think it's that far off of 90 degrees. It is a little bit, but.
Yes. Yeah, you'd have to rotate it to 3 o'clock. You're right. So it's just something to take a look at. I think it'd be better, it'd be safer for people pulling in and pulling out of there, or pulling in only, whatever you come up with on that. But that's.
I like the in and out, one way in and out. Would
It's
certainly
good.
be safest.
And the other thing, what's going on across the road from here? You've got the coffee and that little strip center. None of those driveways align with either one of these.
I don't believe they line up directly.
Okay. Okay. So how about the proposed street tree? That's outside the lot line, it looks like. On the landscape plan here, if I'm looking at that correctly. And then my other question is going to be these, looks like these are some junipers that are going to be within the detention basin.
I think they're right up at the top of the bank of the detention basin, Warren.
Along the top.
Yeah.
The architect's plan looks nice. The engineer's plan looks square and rectangular. If he's got nice curves in there, so I just want to make sure they're going to fit. We're not going to have to deal with those plants.
Well, they always make it look prettier than our plants, but
I know.
I think that was the intent, was to have some plantings along the top of that bank.
Right. And then that tree to the north, it looks like you've got to pull that back so it's inside of the lot line, not in the DOT right away.
I thought the ordinance said that we needed to put a street tree within the right of way.
No, it's got to be on your property.
Okay,
But
then no
abutting
problem. I
street.
mean, that's a very simple fix. We'll just pull that back. It looks like it's about 2 feet that it's got to move.
Yep, that works. You all set, Warren?
Yeah, I'm all set, Ron. Thank you. Thank you, Todd, Gord, Patrick.
Well, Warren, thanks.
Bob, do you have anything on, Warren already addressed the sewer issue?
Yeah,
moving the
that's
sewer
about
line.
all I had, was that sewer. And I believe the sewer that feeds that property is to the south. Almost heading that existing concrete driveway, so that might work in your favor.
Okay.
But that's all I have. Looks good.
Fire department, Bill, do you have any issues, concerns?
Yeah, just two real quick. Unfortunately, it sounds like I'm gonna beat a dead horse here. Driveway. I need accessibility. So we need 20 feet wide. If it is on the plans, I just didn't see it, but I do need a 20-foot wide driveway. And that gravel out front, my only concern is I got a 38-ton ladder truck. Is that gravel gonna be okay for me to drive over on a wet day? You know what I mean?
I'm sure that'll be constructed with a sub base and then some gravel on top, so that you're not gonna sink in there.
Yeah, no, just like I said, I saw that. I was like, okay, I gotta ask. But I did not see any width for the driveways in the plans. By code, I do need a 20-foot clearance. That's really it.
Yeah, I think I read that it was 12 feet if one way and 20 feet if two. Does that make any difference to the
NFPA 1 just says 20-foot access with a 13-foot vertical clearance.
Is that 20 feet all the way around that?
Just access to the building. It doesn't have to be completely around the buildings.
Okay.
So if we made the entrance in 20 feet and then came up and turned it into the gravel, we wouldn't have to bring back 20 necessarily on the out.
I don't particularly think so, no.
Okay.
And I think what you're talking about too with the 12-foot, that might be residential, but I think since we're somewhat going commercial, that puts you in that next category.
Okay.
But yeah, that's really my only concerns. And like I said, I'm sorry I beat a dead horse, it sounds like, but that was it.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Does that affect our DOT, Todd?
Well, it's 20 feet, it's not 20 feet now, so.
So we're gonna have to rebuild that culvert.
So, well, I think the culvert itself is actually 27 or 8, something
Okay.
like that wide. So I think the culvert head walls are adequately spaced apart. We just, that curb cut opening is not currently 20 feet wide. Well, I mean, the opening right at the edge of pavement of Quinnic Ave is 20 feet, but
Right. Okay.
I think if we move I think we'll have to move the southern edge of that driveway over another 5 feet or something towards the stone wall a little bit. But maybe if we bring the sewer line out on that southerly edge, kind of do all that in
We'll
one,
be doing that construction anyway.
do all that in one shot, I guess.
All right.
All right, and then I'll just go quickly through the design criteria. Court, you already touched on a couple of things.
All right.
And mine are probably more questions than concerns. There's a requirement that there be no overhead utilities, electric, phone, cable, that those be underground. Is that the case? I didn't see that on the plan.
Todd, we're coming in underground, right?
I didn't show underground. I think the existing is overhead now, but we certainly can, there is a pole there. We can have that be underground. I think the pole's up at the north property corner. They should be able to come in underground there, north of the water line.
So as long, it's either that or you would be requesting a waiver for the overhead. So one way or the other. On the lighting, you touched on this, Court. I looked at the lighting plan. I would like to see some documentation, cut sheets or something to demonstrate that the fixtures are dark sky compliant. I didn't notice that.
Steve, you want to unmute on that?
Yeah, I can. I think we provided some cut sheets, but I'll get you some more information.
Okay.
I thought we sent a supplemental set of cut sheets that did that, Ron, but
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
in fairness, it's trickled in over 4 months, so I couldn't tell you the date or
I
time.
might have
we
missed it.
had an initial submission and then we edited it to have, for example, I think we had some uplights on the sign out front, and then we turned it into a light that's attached to the sign
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
shooting down, and then a few other things with cut sheets. So it should be there, but I'll take a look at it, and if it's not,
I know the purpose was to make the changes so no waiver was required,
Okay.
and we're willing to make sure that you get the cut sheets
Yep.
so that that's the case.
Great. Thank you. A couple of actually relatively new requirements in the commercial design standards. They're in the ordinance, but did not yet get transferred onto the compliance checklist that we use and that we may have sent to you. And that has to do with providing a bike rack and then also trash cans. I know you said you weren't going to have trash cans outside.
Well, the bike rack in the art studio seems to be probably a better fit than a whole bunch of other uses that you may require a bike rack. This makes sense to me. This is probably just that type of clientele.
And the requirement is one bike space per 5 parking spaces. So you're basically talking about 2 bike
Yeah.
spaces, which can be, I mean, there's decorative.
We can make
single pole
something
deck-
artistic that's a nice bike rack for sure.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense here.
Could that bike rack go on the southwest corner of the garage in the back there?
As long as, yeah, I'm not sure what the access is for the patrons. If they're going to have access to the back of the property, then yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, the access is really kind of between the buildings, if you see it, is one way. And remember those big windows are an open air door, if you will, a
Okay.
glass door.
Then just sort of flipping through the checklist here. So one potential waiver is actually the garage door. The regulations don't allow for commercial garage doors to be visible from the public way, but I think it's probably technically going to be a waiver, but I can understand the rationale for requesting that design. I totally get what you're trying to do with being able to open those doors up during the nice weather. And
You're talking about the decorative door in the front that is clearly not used for a garage.
it's not a garage, right?
Right.
Exactly,
But
but
it's
it's
an
a garage
architectural
door.
feature that allows this open air plan for the
Right.
studio.
So I think technically it's going to be a waiver, although I think you'll be able to make a case to the planning board that it's a design feature and it's going to facilitate what you're trying to do with the art studio and that sort of thing. So I'll have that on the list that I send to the planning board for waiver considerations. Another thing, if we could add to the architectural or the elevations is a calculation on the area of windows on the street facing facades. There's a requirement that they have between 20% and 60% of glass. I think you're probably there. It's just a matter of adding that calculation onto the elevation drawing.
I'm
Okay.
assuming that door counts as a window.
I believe it would, yes. Very big window, yep.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the building materials, exterior materials, I think the front building is fine. It looks like you're proposing wood shingles. The rear building is going to be a metal sided building. That would be a waiver from the building materials requirement. So you can go ahead and request that waiver, or if you wanted to modify the plan to do wood on that rear building as well, that's really your call.
Okay.
And then last but not least is the one you already mentioned, Court, which is that buffer between the driveway and the building not being that 10-foot required. So that'll go on the list that goes to the planning board for waiver requests.
Do you think that anyone has concerns with that? I saw that as a request in a kind of a larger commercial area, and this one with people pulling up to the sidewalk and some of the plantings seem to be pretty fitting, but
Yeah, I mean, it's if you can do it dimensionally, I know you've got a constrained site here, so I don't know
Right.
that you're able to do it. And you are showing landscaping there, so that's a positive. So it's really going to be up to the board.
my understanding, and I'll let Todd comment, is that detention pond, you go back from the parking, and then we have Patrick and Todd telling us turning ratios to be able to back out of that parking spot and turn and go. So we had to keep a distance there. The building we were trying to keep in the existing location, because if we shift the existing building away from the street, those of you familiar with the site, it's all tiered, and we start getting into another tier and getting closer with the existing building to the residentials, which usually is a zoning no-no, thou shalt not build anything closer to the residential. So we were constrained from pushing it away from the street to gain that distance. If you look at Todd's detention pond, my understanding that was all kind of tight up in the front. And we took that detention pond just as kind of close to the road as we could to leave the parking area. Something had to give to leave the building in the same place. And the most logical space to give was this waiver, while still providing the sidewalk and the landscaping and the aesthetically pleasing things that the ordinance seemed to call for.
So as I'm looking at both plans now, it looks like there may be an inconsistency because Todd's plan is showing probably a 5-foot sidewalk without landscaping in front of the building, but the landscape plan shows a sidewalk with landscaping that might actually meet the 10-foot. So I guess the question is, which one is it?
My plan definitely has the 5-foot sidewalk and 5 feet of planting.
So if that's possible, maybe it's,
Well, again, my apologies, because it's been taken up, it's been over so much time, but as this has been continued to get to DOT, we've continued to work on all of the things that you pointed out were waivers. Todd, did we get that far back enough? I know when Patrick designed this to try to meet the ordinance, there was issues of pushing that back, and the two of you met, and if we gain that, then we may not need the waiver. But I know we were very close.
Yeah, I don't think we can push the building towards the street anymore, or we reduce that area between the parking lot, the parking spaces and the detention basin where you worry about somebody backing into the basin. We may, if we need that 5-foot landscape in that sidewalk area, then we might have to look at trying to just push that building back a little bit more, if that doesn't conflict with all the other things you just talked about with, trying not to push it back towards other areas in the back.
so it's either way. I mean, either you're requesting the waiver or you're not, and one way or the other, the two plans need to be consistent, and they're not right now.
We'll look at that and
Yeah.
see exactly what it is. I don't think it's even an all or nothing. If we have a sidewalk and landscaping, we'll make the sidewalk and landscaping as wide as allowable to meet the parking requirements and to get that detention pond in there. And if the total is 8 feet, then it would be a 2-foot waiver. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not an all or nothing issue. It's as much as we can do in there. That sidewalk really is an interesting concept too, because I'm not sure how necessary a sidewalk is on a single building like this. I understand sidewalks around parking lots, but again, I think some of these requirements are extremely well drafted for larger sites and maybe a little bit extra for these art studio apartments.
No argument there, and that's the reason that we have the ability to grant the waivers, or the
Right.
planning board has the ability to grant the waivers if that's what you wish to request.
Right.
So that's all I had. So I'm just going to run through. I looks like I have several potential conditions, assuming that this committee is going to send this forward to the planning board with a positive recommendation. We need to first get revisions to the storm water management calculations to incorporate the latest 100-year storm, which I
8.6.
guess
Yeah.
Todd is going to look at that. Move the sewer line from underneath the drainage basin. Have the driveways be one in and one out. Provide 20-foot wide access for fire access at the entrance driveway.
Yeah.
Revise the plan to show underground utilities at a bike rack. And then, as just discussed, revise the plans, one or the other or both, so that the landscaping plan and the site plan are consistent. And then depending on whatever that ends up looking like, you may need a waiver or maybe not. So that there's seven potential conditions of approval, and I guess the question to the other committee members, are you comfortable sending this forward to the planning board at this point, subject to those conditions being satisfied? Or would you prefer to see revised plans?
Ron, if you could just add another condition, and maybe we need to talk about this, is that the finished grading would be in agreement with the drainage calculations, the drainage patterns, and the watershed areas that's been designed and is going to be reporting to the basin are maintained, because this existing concrete proposed driveways, there's no finished grades that I can see on those. So I want to make sure that the water gets to, the runoff gets to the detention basin per the calculations. If you could put something in there about that.
Yep. Finished grading consistent with the stormwater design.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And if that happens, I don't have any problem with it, Ron. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Any other committee members have any concerns? So we have those 8 recommended conditions.
I'm all set with it.
Yeah, if there's nothing else, I'll accept a motion to send this plan forward to the planning board with a positive recommendation, subject to those 8 recommended conditions of approval.
So moved.
Say moved by Mr. Hall, seconded by Mr. Costa. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? None. Looks like it's 4-0 in favor with those 8 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Does
You're
that put us automatically on the agenda now, Ron? For
You'll
the-
be on the agenda for the April 14th planning board meeting. You know, if you're able to address some of these issues before that, that's all the better. It just would
Oh, we'll-
reduce.
I would
reduce-
certainly think we're going to handle all of them before then.
Perfect. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Right,
Very much.
Thanks.
And I'm gonna start getting folks in for the next hearing here.
Ron, real quick on my end, I have a inspection scheduled in about 5 minutes.
All right, well,
I didn't see anything on the plans on my end. Again, they just have part of that section looks to be a gravel driveway with that geolock stuff. I'm all good for it as long as it's gonna hold up. I am 100% fine with it. Really have no objections.
you're all set with the access.
Yes, yeah, those plans, they did have the measurements on them, so they look good.
Okay, great. So this
Thank
is-
you.
Yeah, you're all set, Bill. Thank you very much. So this is the application for A1 roofing and construction. Property located on Quidnick Avenue. Assessor's Plat 114, parcel 507. I don't believe there's an address assigned to this particular lot at this point. And this is proposed commercial to commercial buildings with associated site work, parking, landscaping. Looks like we have Mike Russell and Dave Martland on, and Sean is on perhaps. Dave, do you want to give an intro and then we'll have Mike go through the plans?
Sure. Thank you for getting together. I do have to apologize. I've got a situation that has popped up at my house that I need to go and deal with. So I'm going to have to leave in about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to dial in from my phone from the car, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
So the committee is pretty well aware of the particular site here. A1 Roofing owns the property. Sean Napolitano is a special trade contractor. They're utilizing the lot. on the property. It was formerly property owned by JAM Materials. Mike Russell has been doing the engineering for these proposed buildings, which would house both have office use as well as special trade contractor use. The property obviously has frontage and an existing curb cut on Aquidneck Avenue. As a result of being on Aquidneck Avenue, it's a state road, and therefore a DOT permit was required for the proposed improvements. Mike handled all of that and did obtain a DOT permit, which has been made part of the file and the filing here. In connection with that, there was a sort of a little bit of a reconfiguration and realignment of that existing curb cut through the process to make sure it was all on this one lot. The curb cut kind of over time extended into the abutting property. So this is it's aligned to with approval from DOT to be on totally on this property. Additionally, because of the presence of wetlands, the DEM permit was required. Mike handled that, and he'll be able to discuss that, but that's been made part of the filing, as well as I think recently obtained the utility, the water department letter indicating the availability of water for the property. Architectural plans were prepared by Dan Herkenrother from Herc Works, which were submitted, as well as a list of potential waivers. I really think it's probably best for Mike to sort of explain the existing conditions on the property and walk through those proposed conditions, how he's handled the drainage associated with this, as well as dealing with the wetlands that are on site. Mike, if you want to begin to go through those issues.
Sure. Ron, how did you share those plans in the last meeting? Did you share the screen, or did they? I think you're on mute.
You can go ahead and share your screen. That's probably easier than me trying to walk through the plans.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know how you did the last one, whether that was there.
That was me, but I just popped up the site plan. But I mean, I can do that here too, but it might be easier if you do it.
All right, how's that? Can we see that?
Yep.
Okay. Let me just zoom out a minute. Okay, so just following up Dave's introduction here. So the subject property, as shown on this existing conditions plan, is lot 507 on Aquidneck. It's roughly 2.8 acres in size. As Dave mentioned, that was for a long time a contractor's area materials yard run by JM. A1 Construction has taken that over in recent years and utilized it, essentially in the same manner that it had been used previously. The site is located in a Zone 1 watershed protection district. There's freshwater wetlands to the northwest in the northwest corner of the property, as shown here. Is my cursor active?
Yep.
Okay. In this area here, we are going to be, all of the proposed site improvements are going to work within the existing limits of disturbance. So that's very important to note. As Dave said, there's 2 buildings being proposed for this application. Let me just go to the site plan here. So the building nearest Aquidneck Avenue is going to be a mixed-use building. It's just under 11,000 square feet in footprint area. That'll consist of office space in the front, 2 levels of office space. And then this rear section here will be a tradesman center, which are very common, popular on Aquidneck Avenue in Middletown. The rear building will be a standalone tradesman center with different units in there, and that's a little over 5,000 square feet. Dave talked a little bit about the access off of Aquidneck. So the property line, if I can zoom in a little bit more. So the property line effectively goes through the middle of the existing driveway that's there now. So it's used both for the Cardi's operation here to the north, and then also the A1 operation. So it's shared. What the applicant wanted to do was to widen the curb cut on this property to kind of separate the two uses, the traffic of the 2 uses, and that was proposed to DOT, and that afforded them a 30-foot opening there. So there's an existing stone wall, excuse me, return there now that is entirely on the applicant's property that will have to get removed in order to accomplish that. So for these intended uses, we've identified the parking requirements for those uses, office and the tradesmen's units, which in discussion with Dave and the town, I guess there's been a recent category change in the zoning ordinance. It's now called extractive and industrial non-manufacturing, manufacturing uses, etc. So from that, the required spaces are 32. We're providing 36 to include handicap spaces. We're also providing loading space for each building. If I can zoom out, we can get a better look at the overall parking. So you can see how the parking is provided around the site to service both buildings. There's a series of sidewalks to the different door access points for each building for occupants. We're also, the applicant would like to maintain a connection to the materials yard to the south, which he has an interest in that property as well. I'm not sure whether Sean is on this meeting or not, but he can certainly speak to that in more detail, what his long range intent is there. But for the purposes of this application, we are showing a connection for two-way traffic to keep that loop open. Let's see. Green space and lot coverage, we are well under or well under the allowable lot coverage for this zone. We're providing double the minimum required green space for this property in accordance with the commercial design standards. The rest of the dimensional requirements for the LBA zone, we meet. The only thing, I think this was touched on in the previous application. So if this was a brand new lot, I mean, this, in a traffic sensitive zone, it would have substandard frontage. I think, Ron, correct me, or Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd need 300 feet of frontage in a traffic sensitive. This has 250, but it's pre-existing. We're not, I mean, we're modifying a curb cut, but I don't think that would be a zoning issue. Chris, is that?
Looks like Chris left, but yeah, I agree that it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So, and you're allowed one curb cut at a minimum per lot in the traffic sensitive district. So it's really only an issue if you were trying to subdivide this property
Right.
You might have to have a shared driveway, but yeah, so I think you're all set.
Okay. For the additional improvements, there's going to be site lighting. We're going to add I apologize for scrolling through here. Let me just get to the lighting plan. Here we go. So we're just providing a one pole kind of centralized in this area here, which will have twin fixtures, dark sky compliant to illuminate the parking in the middle of the property. We'll have bollard style lighting for the sidewalks, and then wall pack type fixtures over the doorway. So all the intent is obviously to make it dark sky compliant. There will be landscaping associated with the project as well. Pam Rogers from Verde Design prepared a plan which provides parking lot trees, lawn area, low-level planting. We do benefit from existing street trees, which are along Aquidneck Avenue here. As you can see, there are several there that are not fully mature yet, but they're well on their way. So as I mentioned, we doubled the minimum required green space requirement. Stormwater management. I don't know if I can back up a couple of sheets here. So as Dave mentioned, this went to DEM for a wetlands permit and then also stormwater. So we had, there's nothing there on the site now. So it's, the site is for all intents and purposes, as far as DEM is concerned, with a mix of existing pavement and compacted gravel. It's nearly 70% impervious. We're dropping that number down to 50, I believe 56% with the addition of the green space. This is a redevelopment project, obviously. So we employed a lot of low impact development type practices, that type of approach with filter beds, vegetated swales to mitigate the storm flows and provide the required water quality. We're maintaining the discharge points on the site, which are to the rear, are to the wetland. Everything flows from Aquidneck Avenue towards the wetland area. So we provided storm controls, and then during construction, there will be erosion controls provided to protect that resource area. Utilities, we are planning on, again, I apologize, this takes a second for the image to appear. Okay, can everybody, am I still live with the image?
You're still there.
Okay. It's a big delay on my end. So as Dave mentioned, we, as required, development plan review process, we sent a request to Newport Water for availability for this use. It is available. There will be a permitting process following approval of this project with the town of Middletown to receive water service. The plan is to have two domestic services, one for each building, and then the forward building will have a sprinkler system and will need a dedicated fire service. So we need to apply to the Newport utilities for each. Sewer, which will be under the control of town of Middletown. There's an existing stub here that comes into the property. We're proposing a gravity service to a manhole at the property line, connecting to that stub for the forward building. And then as of right now, and this needs to be worked out and talked over with the town, but Um, we are showing a force main to lift wastewater from the rear building to that manhole. It's borderline on whether that can be gravity or not. I'm a little concerned about cover, and we're trying to avoid any other conflict, but there is a sanitary solution one way or another for that building. But as of right now, in this application, we're showing a force main with an exterior pump station. The flows are going to be extremely minimal for this use here in the rear, and somewhat minimal for the forward use for office and tradesman center. We are going to come in with underground power off this pole here in the central area of the site. So one underground service to each building. And that will also service the exterior lighting. Permitting, Dave mentioned that we had received 2 state permits, one physical alteration permit from DOT that was back in June of 2019. That was to widen that curb cut. And then also an insignificant alteration permit from DEM in July of 2019. That was for wetlands and stormwater. We're requesting, as part of the application submission, we requested 2 waivers. One was for pedestrian access from this site to Aquidneck Avenue. We felt that waiver was not, or that requirement was not necessary. There's no sidewalk there. I think the previous application touched a little bit on that. And then the second waiver is the 20-foot buffer to the residential zone back here. So we're afforded a natural buffer there. There's no development and that in close proximity to the rear of this lot. So we feel that there's already a natural buffer, and to add an additional buffer here on the property would not be necessary. So we felt the waiver was justified. So those are the 2 waivers being requested at this.
Do you have 20 feet of natural vegetation on your property? Even if it's not landscaping, if it's natural? That could satisfy it. It doesn't necessarily need to be formal landscaping as long as there's some sort of a vegetated buffer of 20 feet on your property.
What would qualify there, Ron?
Vegetation.
Grass?
Well, it's got to include screening. So if the vegetation is such that it's 6 feet tall,
well, certainly, yeah, I think in this area here, because of the grading of this,
Yep.
this is the specific area why we requested the waiver.
oh, okay, all right. Never mind.
So that's a general overview. I may have missed a couple of points in the site improvements, but happy to turn it over to the TRC members for questions and comments.
You want to go first, Warren?
Thanks, Mike. So a couple of questions, Mike, on the drainage calculation. So it's a redevelopment.
Yeah,
50% of the water quality volume we need to treat, correct?
that's correct.
Is that what your volume is, or did you go any
Yeah.
further?
That was the approach, yep, for redevelopment to meet that at minimum.
Okay. And then I know you mentioned the wetland permit, July 2019.
Yeah,
So do you know the shelf life on that? Is that a
4
5
years.
4-year permit.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna stay current. And then how about the physical alteration permit from DOT? Is that shelf life?
I believe it's 3, but while we're
Just check.
talking here,
It's not 2. We're coming up on 2, right, for these?
yeah, I'm coming up on them. Yep.
Okay,
Whatever reason, I can't access that. I'll while we're talking here, I'll dig that. I believe it's 3, Warren.
good. Okay, just for everybody's benefit here. The other item I had was the north edge of your paving, the parking area, your driveway access, basically.
Is 3 years, Warren. Sorry, that just popped up on DOT.
Oh, they're good for 3.
Yep.
DOT, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. North driveway.
Yeah, I'm interested in the curb, what you have along that edge. Is that water gonna peel off there and be able to just flow right into wetlands? Or is it directed along that edge via curb to to your basin, to your treatment?
Okay, so let's zoom in on that area. Make sure I understand your question and can answer it. All right, Ron, did I stop sharing?
Yeah, no more sharing, Mike.
How's that?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so as you come in, as you enter the site, as you know now, that basically the Carty's property to the north sits lower than this area. So there is, as you look at the proposed contours here, which essentially mimic what is existing, as you pick up this 130 here, everything that breaks off this corner of the sidewalk, this elevation here, will get into this practice, this filter practice. Everything else will continue where it's going now. So it basically is this small area right here, Warren, that'll continue down to the lower area. But the overwhelming majority of everything on the site will get to this practice first, and then everything gets to this practice along the parking area parallel to Quidnick Avenue. So everything inside this driveway that just sits low, it's canted towards Carty's. There's no way to deal with that on the applicant's property. So we're picking up as much as we possibly can, but it's impervious to impervious. You know, it's not like we created anything else there that would go unmitigated.
Yep, I see that, absolutely. And then as you head further west along that edge of pavement, Mike, what happens then? Right in
For
here?
this edge here,
Yes.
this edge, so this here is a filter strip.
Mhm.
Right, so that collects everything off of, well, we have a series of filter strips. That's the practice that we had, for all intents and purposes, it provides storage, it provides infiltration, and it provides treatment. But the practice as it relates to DEM's approved practice is a filter strip. So this is all along this existing limit of disturbance. We are providing a filter strip, and then we're providing a filter strip along this edge. And then you have this practice down here. So how the flows split, they get to these 3 different practices off this west edge.
Okay, so the filter strip, is that a pipe wrapped in fabric with gravel around it, perforated pipe, or what is?
So it has open storage in it. So it varies from a foot to 3 feet deep. It's stone lined on the surface, and then it has a stone section below with an under drain. So those under drains are interconnected, and they all either work to this discharge here, or the discharge out at the other end of the site here.
Perfect. So any contaminants that flow on that impervious pavement asphalt that you're proposing are going to be intercepted by the filter drain before they get out into the wetlands.
That's correct. And it's
If I read that right.
essentially a perimeter system, Warren. I mean, if you follow this all the way around the perimeter of disturbance, you'll see a stormwater practice there. Everything is on the perimeter, basically surrounds these buildings and the parking.
Got you. Good, good. Thank you. And I just see the calculations. You've got 2, 10, 25, 100-year and the water quality bond. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yes, sir.
I think that's good for me with the exception of the driveway. Going back to the driveway entrance, we just had a pretty good discussion about the angle of that, Mike. Is there anything you can do to square that up a little better with traffic, or I'm just looking at that
Square it to what?
to the
Square it.
existing edge of pave, I guess.
You're talking about this?
No, right up where it meets into the existing asphalt on Aquinic Avenue. Right in there.
So you don't, what's the concern here for a car exiting?
Yeah, trying to stay perpendicular to the travel lane, but it looks like you've done that, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think it is.
So that's the exit, and then the entrance is okay. I
Well, there's
see
a
it.
lot of line work. Let me go up to the next,
Yes,
get some of this line work out of there.
there you go.
All right, so here's the existing radius return, curb return. And I got these AutoCAD. Are these yellow boxes popping up?
How do you turn those off?
I wish I knew. It just it's driving me nuts.
They
So
drive us all the-
here's the new curb line here.
Yeah,
So if you can, just gonna take this cursor off. I think that's a pretty wide. I mean, they added considerable width to this opening on this property, and if you join that up with what's on Carty's, and those radiuses are perpendicular to the travel lane, to the southbound travel lane on Aquidneck, I think it's squared up. I mean, it's not I wouldn't call that an odd angle.
okay. And then what's
I
Cardi?
mean, not for this property. Now, I don't know how you feel about Carty's, but we're not changing that. And they've actually been given a little bit better with the vehicles that access that site. They've been given afforded better turning movements as a result of this widening. So,
Gotcha. So how's Cardi going to get in and out of their property? Are they going to have a new driveway, or is there another drive that I don't see here?
that's the same one. Now we're holding their line. We're holding their curb cut. We're just widening it on the applicants on this property.
And curbing it, right?
Yes. Yeah,
So,
that was one of the DOT conditions.
And does the Cardi traffic use this to get into their yard there to the north?
I mean, we're not, I mean, I can let Sean speak to that. I mean, I think with the size of those vehicles, you'll probably see them, crossing this driveway to get in there, but we're not, I think the intent was not to make this, maybe it's an unintended benefit for them, but was not to make circulation from them, improve that for them. So,
Mike, it looks to me like you're closing off their access to Aquidneck Avenue, and you've got a landscape strip on the north side of your proposed driveway, so they're not going to be able to cross using your driveway to get onto their property.
you are correct, Ron. Yes, I'm sorry. No, they are using their other curb cut. I'm mistaken here. Yes.
So on the
I thought
there-
that this was, I I had thought that that was being left there. No, we are closing that there.
Yeah,
But they do have access from their adjacent, they have 2 lots there, so
Right.
that's, that second lot up, they have access.
Right, right. There was a go around with DOT on the ultimate issue was, yes, you're absolutely correct. The ultimate issue is what they call edge clearance. So your driveway needs to be, your functional driveway needs to be 10 feet from the property line. So that's what it was ultimately worked out, right? So I apologize. Yeah, Cardi's will be using their other curb cut.
And they're okay with losing their curb cut here then, apparently.
Yeah, I can let Sean speak to that, but if he's on, or Dave.
They're both on, they can unmute themselves if they want to speak.
*6 to unmute if you're on the phone, right?
Yeah, but they're both on Zoom.
Hello?
Hey, Sean.
Hey, how you doing, Ron? Yeah, so Cardi's has the other entrance there to their north side. So that's what I think they'd be using.
Yeah.
I haven't had that discussion with them or with John Marshall, the current tenant. But I mean, I can have that discussion.
I think you probably should. I don't know that we necessarily are going to dictate whether or not that their curb cut gets closed, but that's just what you're showing on your plan is their curb cut getting closed. So yeah, I think they should know about it.
Well, you know what, Ron? It is closed. Right now, there's a chain across that lower entrance there that goes into the Cardi lot. So they've primarily been using their north entrance.
So they don't use that now.
Yeah, because we were getting too much traffic. So they can use it when they need to use it, but it's not a common thoroughway, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yep. That's all I have, Ron. Thank you. Mike, thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
Sean,
Thanks, Warren. Thanks, Mike.
Bob, do you have any issues, concerns? I know they talked about the sewer and the potential for a pump station.
Yeah, with Mike saying it's a preliminary, it's not set in stone yet. So the only thing I would like to see is some pump calculations, but if we don't go that route, don't need to do it. So that's about all I had.
And that's something that would normally be addressed later on in the permitting process anyway.
Right. So yeah, that's the only thing I questioned, but.
All right. Fire department had to leave early, but he indicated that he was happy with the access, and you'll be getting the fire connection for water. So I think that's all set. And we lost Chris Costa. Not sure why he jumped off, but I think we were all set with zoning. Mike, you said that there were no variance issues, or maybe Dave said that earlier on.
No, I just, we had the quick discussion about the frontage, and I think everyone's in agreement that that's, provided this property stays the same, it's not further subdivided. But no, I think we meet the dimensional requirements of the ordinance for this district. Then I mentioned the 2 waivers that we outlined. I'm not sure whether you agree with those, Ron. I'm sure you've got a follow-up to that.
Yep. Yeah. I had a couple of just clarification questions. So you are requesting the pedestrian access waiver. There's proposed a sidewalk on Aquidneck Avenue. There's a project actually coming hopefully fairly soon. So you can certainly go ahead and request that waiver, but there is a plan to have a sidewalk. Warren, it is on the west side of Aquidneck, right? Yeah, so there would be a sidewalk on Aquidneck in that area. Utilities, I don't know if I missed that on the plan. The utilities are going to be underground serving those buildings?
Electric,
Electric, phone,
Yes.
cable, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. You mentioned lighting. The only concern or question I had is on the wall packs. I looked at the cut sheet you provided and it didn't seem to indicate shielding or otherwise dark sky compliant fixtures. So if we could confirm that.
Yeah, it's all, I mean, for those wall, I mean, it's the same drill as always, Ron. I think it's option or optics option C, for the wall pack unit.
And that's the dark sky compliant option.
That's the dark sky compliant, but I'll make sure that that's perfectly clear. I'll go through those cut sheets, and if we've done this so many times in Middletown with wall packs.
Yeah.
I thought that we had submitted that to make that clear, but I'll go through that and I'll make sure I get it to you.
Great. And then, as I mentioned with the last application, a couple of new items that we require now. If you're going to have outdoor trash cans for the use of your clientele, those need to be shown on the plan. And then,
can you do, I mean, there's a dumpster area right here. Am I still sharing?
Yeah, the dumpster is fine. These would be more trash cans, basically, for folks that are walking into the building. If they want to throw something out as they're walking in, that there's a trash can available to them.
Sean,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's no problem at all. That and the bike rack. I don't have any problem with any of that. Given with the that sidewalk being proposed on the west side of Aquidneck Avenue also, I think that we could probably drop that access waiver, and probably create access to that walkway.
I'm looking at the plan Mike has up now where the two handicap spots are, maybe just having a crosswalk right there across with a break in the wall.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to suggest that if push comes to shove, and that's agreeable to Sean and the committee, that could be extended right there. There is a stormwater practice shallow, so there would have to be some sort of crossing there, a boardwalk, or I have to think about that and talk with Warren to get his thoughts. But something that can certainly be accomplished to get out to this proposed sidewalk that would presumably be right here.
Yep, great. And then on the building design, and this is one we run into quite a bit. You're supposed to have a 4-foot break in the plane of the wall that's greater than 40 feet long. So that front wall should be articulated somehow to create that break in plane. The board has granted a waiver from that on a fairly consistent basis, provided that they're comfortable with the building design. So I would just point out that'll go to them in my memo as a waiver request. And then obviously, if you wanted to modify the architecture and create that break in the plane of the wall, you could do that. But otherwise, it'd be a waiver.
Is Dan Herc on? He's not on the call?
He's not on, no.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I guess he indicated he thought he met that. So you're saying that condition doesn't appear to be met?
Not with what I've seen. It looks like just a straight flat wall. I mean, it's got the windows and some looks like small awnings and whatnot, which are fine, but it's not that 48-inch break in the plane of the wall that's called for in the regulations.
Okay, I'll speak to him about that.
And then when you're talking to him too, as with the last application, could you ask him to add the calculation for the windows?
The percentage?
Yep. Again, it's going to be between 20 and 60%. It looks like you're fine, but just add that calculation to the elevation drawing. That would be great.
Okay, will do.
Rob,
Go ahead.
Rob, I have a question for you. So with that 4-foot break, is that with depth, or is it just any break?
No, It's depth, so basically you'd be stepping the front of the building back 4 feet and then back out. So it's sort of a, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not an architect, but basically you're articulating the wall. So it's not just a straight wall. You'd have, again, you'd be going in 4 feet and then back out 4 feet. So I don't
Right.
know that it's something you can accomplish, or you
I think
That's-
on that, we'll be requesting a waiver then.
yeah, that's fine. And then similarly, well, not similarly, it's a different architectural issue, is the roof. You're showing the mansard roof on the front and the side of the building, of the front building. That rear building is still subject to the requirement for a sloped roof. So that would be another waiver unless you wanted to put something on that back building.
The one all the way in the rear or, yeah,
Well, there's the rear, I guess the rear of the front building, which doesn't have that roof line, the faux sloped roof. But that back building, the second building has just a plain flat roof, so that would be a waiver.
all right. I could probably turn that into a truss roof.
That would be great if you could. As I always say, the fewer waivers you're requesting, the better off you're going to be at the planning board.
Yeah, I could do that.
And then the only other thing, so we talked about the screening and landscape buffer along the property line. And then the only other one is on the southerly property line where you're basically abutting yourself there. You're not showing the buffering and the screening requirement along there. So that would be a waiver. I think you'd have a good argument to give to the planning board that you're operating both properties basically together. So
Can I ask something about that, Ron? So I think
Sure.
the thought was, I talked with Sean about this, so there's we felt that if it was a way, because he's as a controlling interest in both properties, and that the nature of the two properties, we thought were considering putting a fence along here and then a gate to the vehicle access connecting the two properties.
okay,
That I thought a fence would count as a screening element in lieu of vegetation.
it would, yes.
Well, I think didn't we put a fence, did we label that as a,
If you did, I missed it.
okay. Sean, is that you still?
Yes, that's
on board?
accurate, Mike.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
What type of fence are we talking about?
Sean,
6 foot, 6 foot stockade, 6 foot wooden fence.
That sounds good. Yeah, if we could, I'm just looking at the plan now. I don't see it, but I may have missed it. If you could just make sure it's called out on the
yeah,
plan.
yeah, will do.
I think that's all I had. Didn't sound like we had any particular concerns requiring conditions, unless I missed something. Warren, did you hear or think that we need any conditions of the recommendation?
I don't think we need any conditions, Ron, on my part.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, in that case, we'd be looking for a motion to send this forward to the planning board with a positive recommendation, and I'll highlight the waivers in my memo to the planning board.
I'll make a motion to forward it to the planning board.
Is there a second?
Second,
Seconded by Bob. All in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
And none opposed, so 3-0.
Yep.
Off-
Ron,
off-
one
Yep.
other item is that the Conservation Commission meeting this will be zone 1, so we'll be having that meeting second Monday in April.
Okay,
Is that before planning?
Zone 1 watershed.
couple of days before, if it's on the 12th.
So planning's 14th and Concom is 12th?
Yep.
Okay,
The planning board doesn't need the Conservation Commission's recommendation. That goes to the zoning board. I'd forgotten about the zone 1 issue. So the planning board will also be issuing a recommendation relative to Zone 1. When they,
And that,
go ahead,
that meeting's on the 18th, Ron?
14th, planning board is on the 14th.
14th, okay.
Can we do that meeting, Ron, without it going to the planning first?
The conservation? Yeah, that's totally separate. So if you got the request from Jack, not, I was gonna say Jack, from Chris for the recommendation, that's strictly for the Conservation Commission to offer a recommendation to the zoning board. That's separate from the planning board, so it doesn't really matter in what order those happen.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so you're all set for the 14th, and we'll see you there. And I'll be getting the agendas out in the next couple of weeks, so I guess next week. And with
Perfect.
that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
we're adjourned. Thanks, folks.